So over to you, Paul and John.
Yep. Yep. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming on, and thank you, John, for offering to be on tonight. I've known John for about 9 years, but he reckons we might have met back in 2009 in Perth, and or you met someone that knew us in 2009 in
Yeah, it was
Perth.
amazing how God orchestrates meetings.
Are you there, John?
Yeah, mate. Just hang on.
Yep. That's good. I thought you were still talking.
No,
So you're going well now, mate. But you've had some battles recently, and some of them are back from earlier on. So
yeah,
how are you going now?
well, today I woke up alive, and I'm planning on going to sleep alive. But I'm going pretty good these days. I've actually finally got it into my head that today is the only day of my life. Whereas in the past, I was living in the past trying to fix it, and I was living too far in the future, worrying about it, and I forgot the everyday of today. So at the moment, I'm going all right. I've got a couple of minor health problems, but that's uh, that's part of getting older. Hopefully wiser, but today I'm going okay, Paul.
They go back a couple of years ago. You started hitting rock bottom. How low did you go, John?
Um, well, the last episode was January 2018. I didn't realise I was flogged out and busted, but I was leaving your place up in the Territory with the intention of coming back, but I'd said yes to looking after a mate's farm down in Dubbo, and I probably should have said no, but I finally realised that I have a people pleasing tendency because in the old days I didn't know who I was, and I felt that I had to say yes to be accepted, yes to everything, bend over backwards. But it was January 2018, went down to Dubbo, um, uh, looked after the place there, but my elder sister had been diagnosed with cancer in 1992, and it had finally metastasised, and she was about to fall off the perch, and we knew this, and she'd got all of her affairs in order. So I thought I'd slip down there one last time to say goodbye, but I missed her by a day, and we'd sorted out our relationship in previous encounters, but I was really there for my younger sister because a lot of stress and pressure had been put on her, flying from Brisbane to Melbourne to sort out the affairs. And, it was just good to be with my younger sister because we haven't spent a lot of time, um, oh, over maybe 15, 20 years. And we just had some private time. I think it was about one and a half days, just being together before the rest of the rallies and friends came down for the funeral.
But you didn't get to say goodbye to your sister.
No, no, but
And
we did.
how did you take that, John?
Actually, I took it all right because my elder sister and I had had a prickly relationship over years, but uh, maybe 2016, when I was driving the Watoto kids around Australia, I'd been able to drop in and see Linda back then, and we actually addressed a few issues. We were honest with each other, and you know, I was at peace. It would have been nice to have been with her with the final breath, but it wasn't to be. And God had other plans, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. And so a few months later, your mother fell ill.
Well, After we got Linda's funeral arrangements settled, um, and everybody flew out, I went out to Western Victoria to Wooloora to help a mate set up his place. His youngest daughter was being married on the property, so I went out there, and as I left Melbourne, I was an hour out, and I just had to pull over. I knew something was wrong, and I've struggled with sleep for ever since I was maybe 12. So that's 45. 45 years.
What did you struggle with? Sorry.
Sleep.
Oh, sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pulled over. I was feeling weary, and I thought it was just emotional tiredness of being caught up with the emotion of losing a sister and being together with family. But I slept on the side of the road, and it was a dead sleep for about 3.5 hours, and that's unusual. But got out to Wooloora. We did the wedding, and then after that, I just crashed. And I was just, I was fatigued. I was exhausted. I didn't know what was wrong, but I just could not get going again. And Mark and Jilly, they were great. They just left me. They didn't badger me. They didn't say, "Oh, you got to be doing this," or they just left me and just allowed me to be. But 2 weeks in bed, I couldn't refresh myself or keep going. But and I thought, well, this is no good. It's time to get back to the territory. So just as I was about to leave, I had this brainwave. I thought, hang on, I'm too close to the east coast, so I'll slip up to Toowoomba in Brisbane and check on Mum, because she was struggling. She was 85 at the time, losing her firstborn. I thought it was wise to come up and check on Mum and to my younger sister, because she was led to believe she was going to be the executrix, but it turned out she wasn't, and then she'd been doing all of this work, and she was struggling with grief, and anyway, it took me 3.5 days to do a 26-hour trip, and I knew something was wrong. But when I got to Toowoomba, I just said good day to Mum and just went to bed, and basically I stayed there for 15 months.
You stayed in bed for 10 months.
15 months, almost 2 years.
15 months.
15, as in 1.5 years. But there was something wrong. But in the meantime, I got to Toowoomba in April, and Mum died in September. We didn't realise, but she had pancreatic cancer, and she was going down the tube, and I was going down the tube, and my younger sister sort of didn't know what to do with me. But I'd struggled with depression and depressive episodes many times over the years, but it turned out that none of the drugs would help. And I progressively got worse, and then dealing with the grief of losing Mum, that exacerbated the problems. And traditionally, the Anderson family never did grief. We didn't know how to express our emotions, but grief was one of those things that we never touched on.
And so, as a child, there were some things. What with your father? What was your relationship like with your father?
Dad was absent, and he was a hard man, troubled man as well. He wasn't allowed to follow his dreams, in that my grandfather was, and my perception of my grandfather as a child was he's a soft man, a gentle man, gardener, loving man. But when he was a father, he was an old coal miner in Britain, and he was a Geordie up near Newcastle, but there was no future in the coal. So at least he had the foresight to see that there was no future in England, and for a future and a hope for his kids, he brought them out to Australia. But Dad had an apprenticeship lined up over there, so he lost out on that. When they settled in Cairns, he had another apprenticeship, but Grandma had an accident and she had to come to Toowoomba to convalesce. And Dad missed out on that. So I think there was a bit of bitterness and a bit of abuse as well that went on. But Dad...
where did Dad end up, John? How did he end up?
Well, Dad was absent. I was the only boy in our family, but I was the whipping boy, so I copped it whether I deserved it or not. But when I get this mixed up, but it must have been around 20 or 21. There was a couple of things happened in my life, but a couple of years earlier, Mum and Dad divorced, and anyway, one morning, Mum woke me up, and one of the few times I was asleep, but she woke me up and she said, "Don't be sad, your dad's dead." And after the divorce, he'd married another woman, and I don't know what happened, but he hung himself in the garage. So not only was there our family broken, but another family. His second wife had 2 boys, and it was a tragedy. But he didn't know how to ask for help, and the problems obviously seemed too great. And
How did you take it, John?
well, when I was a kid, I was always told children should be seen and not hurt. Speak when you're spoken to, and don't you cry, or I'll give you something to cry for. So I learnt to just shut my emotions down, not feel, not be. So I was in shock, but basically shut down and, tried to function, but I didn't function very well. There was grief that I didn't know how to express. There was grief of not being a loved son, but I can't say that honestly, because having gone through my loss of family, and Dad loved us, he just didn't know how to express it, and there were circumstances that I wasn't aware of, and I can't judge him because I didn't walk in his shoes. So I found it very hard to operate after that. So basically, I think even earlier than that, I'd made some judgments as a young fella, under 10. If that's marriage, you can stick it, and if that's religion, you can stick it twice as far. So I had some pretty judgmental ideas from an immature young lad that didn't have any direction.
He didn't have any understanding of God growing up?
No, not really. I went to Sunday school, but that was something you did. I was confirmed in the Anglican Church, and I became an altar boy because everything went over my head, and being an altar boy, it gave me something to do, and I could stand up when the Glennie at the front of St James in Toowoomba, and the Glennie girls had come down, and I'd be standing up there in my cassock and and frock, and perving on the girls. But as far as we never opened the Bible at home. We didn't have any relationship per se, and it was just gobbledygook to me. And
so you had no understanding of God because you didn't have anything to do with religion. And so even with marriage, you never wanted to get married?
Well, I saw Mum and Dad's marriage disintegrate, and I saw some of the stuff that went on, and it's like, well, the greatest thing, and I've heard this said before, and the greatest thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. And I didn't see love, that sacrificial love. So, and the other sad thing is I found Dad's porn stash. In those days, it was only paper, but, I found that in his cupboard when I started grade 8. So I think that was when I was 11 or 12. So basically that skewed my view on women, valuing them. I saw them as objects, gratification, and I really didn't have any understanding of marriage. True marriage, sacrificial love.
Yeah. So you end up, you didn't marry Joe, but you were in a relationship for a while and had 2 daughters.
Yep.
And that went well for a while.
Yeah, it was in 92. I because I didn't have men in my life. I failed high school. And some things, last, the words that are spoken over you and towards you can be hurtful. And, I'm sure they didn't mean it maliciously, but, the things that were said to me that I was just like my father. I was a typical Anderson male. I was hopeless. I was a no-hoper. I really shut down and just thought, well, what's the point? So, after Dad's suicide, I actually fell into, I had a few odd jobs around the place, worked on small farms, mixed grain, tomato farms, pub jobs, video stores, but it was aimless. There was no direction. But I actually fell into telecom, and I was there for 28 years, but started in 85 and 92. I finished end of an era project out at Birdsville. We cut the last party line over from Tambar Station to Longreach, and I'd been out there for 9 months, and she was pretty brutal in those days. But when I got home, I tried to catch up with another girl that I knew, that I'd kept in contact with, and anyway, I made a phone call and said, "Oh, it's John Anderson. Just leave a message for Jill that I rang." And this girl said, "Oh, did I go to Mount Lofty?" And it was Joe. So I was never confident talking to girls, but I sort of knew Joe, and we formed the relationship in 93. And then sadly it finished in 2005. But we had some really good years. She was a travel agent. I got to travel to some absolutely fantastic places in the world, and saw some amazing things, abject poverty and ridiculous wealth. But we did have some good times, and out of a de facto relationship, God blessed us with two beautiful girls. And the sad thing is we weren't married, and there was no commitment before God, family, or friends. And because of my pornography addiction, and I was addicted to a lot of other behaviours, that relationship failed, and it was pretty messy. You still there, Paul?
Hey, John. Paul's having a little bit of technical difficulty. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. So the next question Paul was going to ask you there is, what was your turning point after your months of depression?
This last one, or back when Joe and I split?
Whichever one you'd like to talk about.
Well, Well, when Joe and I split, I had nowhere to live in Brisbane except my younger sister's place, and she, funnily enough, lived in Marumba Downs. So I went out there, and I used to travel past Ian Watto's truck yard every day going to work. But I was so broken about the split that finally I fell down the pit of depression. And anyway, I had treatment and sort of slowly came out of it. But that's how I met Watto. I thought, well, years ago I'd lied about having a truck license, and then I had to lie to get out of the debacle. And I went to see if I could learn to drive a truck. And Ian never taught me, but there were some fantastic teachers. Brendan, his middle son, was one of them. But the turning point spiritually was I was 42 at that time. And there was one day I was in Ian's office, and there was nobody around. It was quiet. So I had this question that I was burning to ask him, and I said, Ian, was there a...
Take your time.
Was there a top? Yeah. No, I didn't think it'd affect me again, but I said to him, Ian, was there ever a time in your life that you did everything wrong? And as soon as I said that, well, I sort of broke down. I let some pathetic tears go because I'd never cried. Probably since I was 11, I never cried from then on. Anyway, Ian basically said, "Oh, can I pray for you?" And inside of me, I had all of this vitriol and anger and hatred rise up. And I was basically going to say to him, expletive, get away from me. And out of me came this pitiful, yes. So Ian stepped around from the counter, and he put his arm around me, and he couldn't remember what the prayer was. I couldn't remember what the prayer was, but it was the first time that a bloke had put his arm around me and in love and compassion. And that was the turning point, and that's how my relationship with him started. So, he became a very close mate, mentor, grandfather figure, father figure, and I was privileged to travel all over the country with him with Shed when from early February 2006. But that was the main turning point. He used to say, if you deny the spiritual side of your being, you do so at your own peril. And I denied the spiritual side of my being, and I denied grief. I denied all of my emotions, so I was devoid in a lot of areas. But this last period of depression,
Do you want to just walk us through just a little bit? This like the last lot of depression, how just briefly how you come to stumble again, or not stumble, but end up in that deep depression again, because you were in it for probably what 2-3 years, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, I disappeared for, well, it was January 2018, and I surfaced again about June, July last year. So what's that? 2 and a bit years. I didn't know how to express grief, and grief and a few things that had happened through my life, I denied them, and I didn't realise that certain things had affected me, because the main thing was I wasn't honest with myself, and I'd pushed things to the side and tried to plough ahead through all of my debacles, and Shed was part of that. I was trying to help other people, but you've got to help yourself first. And the stewardesses, air hosties in the plane say in an emergency, when the oxygen drops from the roof, you've got to put it over your face first before you help your children or anybody else.
Yeah. So what?
And
Just briefly, John. What did that look like for you at the time? Was it like I'm going to put words out there, but tell me your words. I'm thinking, was it a way to get it like as a distraction, or
no,
what was going on for you then?
I was tired.
Right.
I was absolutely shagged, and everybody was saying I was depressed. And it's like, I'm not depressed. This is doctors in Toowoomba, and they nearly killed me. I was saying I'm not depressed. I feel depressed. I feel angry. I feel frustrated that you're not listening to me, but I don't need these drugs. I've been down this path before, and I've always respected authority, but I've hated crap authority. So I've respected it. So no, you're depressed, so you need to go on medication, and so I did. But I never this last period when I got to Mum's place, I was tired. I'd been burning the candle at both ends for 28 years with Telecom and Telstra. The corporate lifestyle had killed me. The split with the girls, doing shed had wrecked me in that. A friend and lovely wife of a great mate, he said, John, don't do any more sheds. And I understood why, but I didn't understand. But it's just that Ian used to know how to let stuff go to the keeper. I hadn't got to that stage yet. So my spiritual walk with Jesus wasn't there yet. I believed, but there was something holding me back. And, the sad thing is I'm a bit of a burden bearer. I like to be in relationship with people. I missed it when I was growing up. But all the sheds and places I've been, conferences, the names, the faces, the places are different, but the stories are all the same. Abject, brutality and destruction, whatever. But this time, I struggled, but I craved sleep. I was so tired, and I couldn't get sleep. And basically, for 12, 13 months, I was surviving on an hour of sleep, if that. And my body was hyper alert. And basically at the end, the doctors said, look, we're going to have to, the antidepressants, the Valium, heart medication, all this other stuff, my body was just shot. They said, we'd like you to try transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I said, what's that? And they said, oh, basically it's electroshock therapy. And I said, they suggested it a couple of times, and I knew deep in my spirit, in my depth of despair and not being able to interact with people because I was ashamed and past memories, I couldn't fix them, and I was down the rabbit hole in a good way. But I knew deep in my spirit that there was nothing wrong with my brain. So I stopped going to treatment, and that was September 2019. And then I think it was February 2020, I went cold turkey off everything, all my drugs, everything. And I don't recommend that to anybody because it's quite brutal, withdrawal symptoms. But the antidepressants were making me psychotic. And I had set stuff up, and I was close to topping myself because, if I was just like my father, well, and I was hopeless and no hope, well, what's the point of hanging around? So
just to then highlight then, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, I think you said it before, is that you identified that the real issue was that you weren't handling the grief. Is that right? That's what
yes.
that's what you were saying before, right? It was all these things that the doctors were saying, was wrong with you, but deep in your spirit, you felt that they're off on the wrong track. And what you've discovered was that it was actually that you weren't able to handle grief, or you weren't handling grief well, and you were
No.
bearing the burden of that. Is that right? Talk us a little
Oh, yeah.
bit about what happened then. And I'm just conscious of time as well. You know, you got a huge story, but also then what did God do with you? What came out of it?
Well, not knowing how to deal with grief, going cold turkey off all the drugs. Finally, one day, there's no way I was going to get sleep. And I remember waking up maybe April and going in 2020 going, nothing changes if nothing changes. And it's like, well, what do I have to change? So slowly I went, well, when was I at my best? So I went back to, I sought out some old doctors in Brisbane. I thought they were retired or dead by now, but they were still practicing limited hours. And they did some extensive testing, and I was so low in testosterone, and there was traces of Ross River hit me back again, and rheumatic fever from a kid. I'd been on hyper alert for all these years. I was worn out, and the condition wasn't actually depression. It was a symptom of a different problem. So they started slowly treating me with that, and then the other thing was, I thought, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I hadn't lost my faith, but I hadn't been practicing it. I couldn't read my Bible. So if I couldn't sleep, well, why toss and turn in bed? So I went out the balcony at Mum's place, and one day I started reading the Bible. I was there for 2.5 hours at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was beautiful. And then the next night, because I'm a creature of habit, I went out there again to try to replicate it because it worked. I couldn't read it. And I ended up bawling my guts out, tears everywhere. And then I just sort of heard God say to me, John, you don't have to do that religiously. You're sitting here with me. And for all of my life, I've never given God my first fruits. I've always given him the scraps. And it's like, be honest, John. Sort of, I wasn't honest with myself, and there was sexual abuse when I was 20 that I thought I'd addressed, and I hadn't. I'd brushed it aside, and a mate got abused as well, and he left me in the same place and abandoned me. So I've had these trust issues. Trust with my parents, trust with teachers, trust with the bloke, and sort of, I've always had a problem with that. And it's like, well, Lord, show me how to trust you. And he started giving me pictures, and sitting out on the balcony out there, after Watto died, I couldn't get to I could have, but I wouldn't have been any good. But that's 9 years ago we flew across to Perth, and I remember the verse that Angus Buchan said, get your house in order. It's 2 Kings 20. Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. And it's like, bloody hell. I've been helping every other man and his dog across Australia with Telecom, Telstra, Shed, blah, blah, blah. And I hadn't looked after my family because I didn't know how. And, I did not, and sitting out there again, the only commandment with a proviso is honour your mother and your father, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. I hated Mum. I hated Dad. And I hated the circumstances. I hated his death. And I didn't know how to grieve it. And I spent a lot of time crying out there. And the shortest sentence in the Bible is Jesus wept. So if it was good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
Absolutely.
But, the thing is, I thought I'd accepted Jesus years ago with Watto and the boys and down at Better Blokes. But I accidentally locked myself out here, and there's no spare keys. So I had to break the door. And anyway, I fixed it about 2 weeks ago. So it's been broken for 18 months. But the message that came out, I could lock the screen door. In Revelation 3, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him. Well, back then, I'd open the door to Jesus. I could hear him, I could smell him, I could see him, but I couldn't feel him. And it's like, oh, you bloody idiot. I had the security door and the screen door locked. So you unlock that, and it's like things changed, and I'm actually just living today now, you know, sucking the guts out of each and every day that I have now. So there's lots in there, Simon.
Okay, just quickly then, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I guess two things. Where are you at with God now? And then a couple of bits of advice you'd like to leave with these blokes tonight.
At the moment, I believe. I'm a believer. You know, before I sort of say I was a Christian, but I think I'm actually finally trusting in the Lord with all of my heart, not just part of it. And it's like half the time, you know, what does that mean? Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding, John. It means trust in the Lord with all of your heart. And it's like I'd been given him bits of my heart, but not all of it.
And that's like, is that like, John, like you said before, is that like opening the screen door and the front door?
Yeah, and the security door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other part is, with these mental health issues these days, the young doctors are look, I'm not knocking them. Each case is different. But I firmly believe that most guys do not know how to deal with grief, their emotions. And if you look back, lost opportunities, lost schooling, lost opportunities, lost relationships, lost children through divorce or death. Grief is something that we don't know how to do. And I would recommend that if you're struggling with any areas, is seek out a really good old doctor, one that knows the relationship of families and stuff like that. Because in this pharmacological society, a pill doesn't take away grief. A pill doesn't take away shame. A pill doesn't take away financial duress. And a pill does not restore your family. But it's like today, guys, just live today and just be honest with yourself so that you can be honest with God, so that you can be honest with your family and your friends. And it's like, you know, I've had a lot of burdens lifted off me in the last couple of months. And, you know, I've re-engaged with guys. Daryl Pittman was the first bloke. And I said, Daryl, I don't know how to re-engage with the guys. And he said, Johnny, just do what you did with me. Make the call, go slow, and be gentle on yourself. So, guys, I think that's all I can give you. But the other part is trusting God. He's got a better plan than I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Look, there's so much gold in your story there, and it's awesome wisdom that you've been sharing with the blokes just now in your advice. And great advice, great bits of wisdom there from you, John. You've had to go through a lot to learn those nuggets yourself. And thanks very much for coming on tonight, for sharing.
Can I, two things. Sometimes it says, oh, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death. It means you go through it. You don't actually roll out your swag and camp there for 2 years. So, but Jesus had to do the journey to the cross by himself to give us freedom. And sometimes we actually have to sort out our crap ourselves. We can't transfer it onto somebody else, or like Simon, you can't walk my journey for me. Absolutely. You can be there and support me. A counsellor said, John, it's offensive if you say that I'm helping you. I'm here to support you. And it's like Jesus met everybody in the Bible where they were. He didn't meet them where they should have been. at where they were at the time. And if you're able to play this next song, there's no clip to it, but the words are for all of the Christian people, the believers. I'd ring up the Walkup Hotel in the Territory at Paul's Gate, order my meal, and then drive up there at 130 k's an hour, listening to this song with tears coming out of my eyes. But it's just
John,
listen to the words.
Tell us for anyone viewing this recording afterwards, just tell us what's the name of this song that they can go and look up on YouTube.
Unconditional Love by Glenn Campbell.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks very much, John. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your honesty. It sounds like it's been an absolute tough journey for you to get to where you are today. It's great to hear you in so much a better place with so much more wisdom that you can share with us blokes sitting here on Zoom. So, guys, give them a round of applause. That's so good. Thank you.